The last bell had barely faded when Emma Reed made one small decision that would split her life into two versions, before and after. It was a crisp afternoon in a quiet suburb where the sidewalks still held the day's warmth. Students spilled out of the brick school building in clusters, laughing, shouting, dragging backpacks, kicking at fallen leaves. Emma, 15, walked alone, her earbuds dangling but silent, because she liked hearing the neighborhood sounds when she was thinking. The distant lawnmower. A dog barking behind a fence. The soft hiss of traffic on the main road. She took the usual route, past the little park with the tired swings, past the corner store with sun-faded posters in the window, toward the row of houses where her mother would be starting dinner soon. It was ordinary in the way people trust without realizing they're trusting, an everyday path, an everyday sky. Halfway down Maple Ridge Road, a vehicle rolled up beside her at a crawl. It wasn't flashy. A plain, work-worn SUV with dust in the wheel wells. The driver's window lowered with a soft mechanical whine. "Hey," a man called gently, like he'd said it 1,000 times. "You heading toward Brookside?" Emma slowed. The man looked to be in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, baseball cap, stubble, a clean jacket that smelled faintly of detergent when the breeze shifted. His hands rested on the steering wheel, casual, visible, as if he understood what made people wary. "Yeah," Emma answered, cautious but polite. He nodded, glancing toward the darkening line of clouds in the distance. "Storm's coming in. I'm going that way anyway. I can save you the walk." Emma hesitated. Her phone battery had dipped into the red at lunch. Her mother hated her being late. The wind picked up, stirring grit along the curb. "It's fine," Emma started to say. The man smiled, small, practiced, not too eager. "Totally your call. I've got my niece your age. I'd want someone to offer." "You look like you've had a long day." That sentence did it. Not the offer, the understanding. Emma felt seen in the simplest way, like someone had recognized she was tired. She pictured her mother's worried face when Emma was late, the way the neighborhood got quiet at dusk, the way the air before a storm made everything feel urgent. She moved closer, keeping a careful distance. "You promise you're going toward Brookside?" He lifted one hand from the wheel in a quick, reassuring gesture. "Cross my heart. Hop in. I'll drop you right at the corner." The passenger door clicked open. Emma climbed inside. The seat belt felt cold against her fingers. The interior smelled like pine air freshener and something heavier beneath it, oil, maybe, or damp fabric. She shut the door, and the outside world muted instantly, as if someone had turned down the volume on the entire afternoon. "Thanks," she said, trying to sound grown-up. "No problem," he replied, pulling forward. At first, it matched what he'd promised. They drove the right direction. Emma watched familiar mailboxes pass, familiar yards. Her shoulders loosened a fraction. Then he missed a turn. Emma leaned forward slightly. "That street back there." "Construction," he said smoothly, not looking at her. "Detour. 2 minutes." He turned onto a narrower road lined with trees that leaned inward like they were listening. Emma's phone buzzed once in her pocket and went quiet again, battery dying, she realized with a sudden pinch of panic. The man hummed under his breath, a tuneless sound. His fingers tapped the steering wheel in an impatient rhythm that didn't match his calm voice. Emma stared out the window as houses thinned into open fields. The sky looked different out here, bigger, heavier. The road dipped and rose like a slow wave. "Where are we?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. The man finally glanced at her. His eyes were flat in a way that made Emma's stomach drop. "Just a shortcut," he said. And with that, he reached down, quick, practiced, and the car doors made a sharp, final sound. Click. The locks engaged. Emma's breath caught, thin and sudden, as the last of the neighborhood disappeared behind them. Panic didn't arrive all at once. It crept in slowly, like cold through thin fabric. Emma told herself there had to be a reasonable explanation. Adults took wrong turns. Detours happened. She pressed her palms against her jeans to keep them from shaking and watched the road signs, handmade, crooked, unfamiliar, slide past the window. "Can you slow down?" she asked. Her voice sounded smaller than she expected. The man's jaw tightened. "Almost there." "Where is there?" she pushed, trying to sit straighter, trying to reclaim space. He didn't answer. The road narrowed into gravel, the tires crunching loudly, the sound filling the car until it felt impossible to think. Trees closed in on both sides, tall and dense, swallowing the sky. Emma reached for the door handle without thinking. It didn't move. "Please," she said. "I need to get home." That was when he finally spoke again, and his voice had changed, stripped of warmth, stripped of patience. "You should have stayed quiet." Her heart slammed so hard it hurt. She thought of her mother checking the clock. Of her brother arguing over the TV. Of the dinner table she would never reach if she didn't do something now. The vehicle turned sharply, jolting her sideways. Ahead, a metal gate appeared, rusted and sagging, half hidden by weeds. The man got out, unlocked it, then drove through without looking at her once. The gate slammed shut behind them with a hollow clang that echoed long after the engine stopped. They had reached a remote property, flat land, scattered debris, a few weather-beaten structures that looked forgotten by time. No neighbors. No sound. Just wind brushing through tall grass. Emma tried the door again as he parked. Still locked. He turned toward her slowly. "If you cooperate," he said, measured and deliberate, "this will be easier." Fear exploded into clarity. Emma nodded, not because she agreed, but because she understood something important: surviving meant listening. He guided her out of the car, his grip firm but controlled, eyes darting as if he were checking for witnesses that didn't exist. He led her past a sagging shed to a long metal storage container, its surface scarred with rust and old dents. It looked like it had been dropped there years ago and never retrieved. When the heavy door slid open, a wave of stale air rolled out. Inside was dim, lit by a single hanging bulb powered by an extension cord. A thin mattress lay on the floor. A jug of water. A plastic chair. Nothing else. "This is temporary," he said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe that himself. "You stay put. You listen. No screaming. No trying anything." Emma stepped inside on unsteady legs. The metal floor was cold, even through her shoes. When the door slid shut behind her, the sound was deafening, a final, metallic judgment. Darkness swallowed the edges of the space. She sat down slowly, pulling her knees to her chest, fighting the urge to cry because crying felt like giving up control. She counted her breaths. 1, 2, 3. Hours passed, or minutes. Time fractured. That night, miles away, Emma's mother stood at the kitchen sink staring at a phone that wouldn't ring. Her brother paced the living room, checking the street through the front window every few minutes. By midnight, police cars lined Maple Ridge Road. Search teams combed parks, ditches, and back roads. Posters went up before dawn, Emma's school photo copied again and again: brown hair, cautious smile, eyes that looked older than 15. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived at the Reed house. It claimed Emma had left by choice. The handwriting was careful. Too careful. Investigators read it in silence, then exchanged glances that said the same thing without words. This wasn't a goodbye. It was a message written under watchful eyes. And somewhere beyond the search perimeter, inside a sealed metal container, Emma Reed listened to footsteps outside and learned the first rule of staying alive: pay attention to everything. Days blurred into weeks, and weeks stretched into something shapeless and heavy. Inside the container, Emma learned the rhythm of captivity. The man, she came to know him as Daniel, arrived at irregular hours, sometimes twice a day, sometimes not at all. His moods were unpredictable. Some days he spoke too much, pacing the narrow space, complaining about his job, his past, people who had wronged him. Other days he barely looked at her, dropping off food and water with mechanical efficiency before sealing the door again. Emma listened. Always listened. She noticed how his tone shifted when he was tired, how his shoulders tightened when he felt questioned, how he calmed when she kept her voice low and her words simple. She learned which topics made him linger and which made him leave faster. Survival became a quiet study of patterns. At night, the container creaked as temperatures dropped. Metal popped and groaned, each sound sharp in the silence. Emma lay awake on the thin mattress, staring at the faint outline of the ceiling bulb, forcing herself to remember details from home so they wouldn't fade: her mother's laugh, the smell of clean laundry, the way the front door stuck unless you lifted it just right. Search efforts intensified outside her world. Volunteers scoured fields and drainage ditches. Helicopters traced slow circles over wooded areas. Daniel mentioned it once, almost proudly, shaking his head. "They're everywhere," he said. "Won't find a thing." Emma said nothing, but inside, hope flickered dangerously bright. Months passed. Daniel began to unravel in small ways. He talked to himself. He argued with the radio. He grew paranoid, checking locks again and again, accusing Emma of things she didn't understand. Once, he arrived shaking with anger, muttering about an incident at work that had drawn attention he didn't want. After that, everything changed. He became erratic, staying away longer, then returning suddenly. He drank more. He slept less. His careful routines fell apart, and Emma realized something terrifying and fragile at the same time: he was losing control. She adjusted her approach. She asked harmless questions. She thanked him for small things. She spoke as if she depended on him completely, even as she memorized every sound of the property, every direction the car turned when he drove. One evening, without warning, he opened the container door and told her to get in the vehicle. Emma's heart pounded, but she didn't hesitate. Hesitation invited suspicion. They drove for a long time. The road felt familiar before she understood why: the same turns, the same gradual return of houses and streetlights. He stopped abruptly near the edge of town. "Get out," he said, staring straight ahead. "Don't look back. Don't say anything." For a moment, Emma didn't move. Then she opened the door. Cold air rushed in. The smell of pavement. Distant traffic. She stepped out, her legs weak but holding. The car pulled away before the door fully shut, disappearing into the night. Emma stood alone under a streetlight, shaking, until she recognized the corner store. The park. Maple Ridge Road. Home was only a few blocks away. She walked. When she reached the front door, she knocked once, softly, then again, harder. The door flew open, and her mother's scream broke the quiet street wide open. 9 months after she vanished, Emma Reed was home. At first, fear kept her silent. But silence couldn't last forever. And when she finally spoke, the truth would unravel everything Daniel had tried so desperately to hide. Home didn't feel real at first. Emma sat wrapped in a blanket on the living room couch while neighbors crowded the yard and police cars lined the street once again, this time for a miracle instead of a mystery. Her mother wouldn't let go of her hand. Her brother hovered nearby, staring as if Emma might disappear if he blinked. Questions came quickly, then stopped just as fast. Emma shook her head. "I'm tired," she whispered. No one pushed her. Fear clung to the room like smoke, fear that whoever had taken her might still be watching, might still be close. Investigators agreed it was best to wait. Emma spent days sleeping, eating small meals, relearning the quiet comfort of ordinary things: clean sheets, sunlight through curtains, the hum of the refrigerator at night. But silence has weight. As days passed, Emma's nightmares grew sharper. Metal walls. Locking doors. Footsteps outside. She woke drenched in sweat, heart racing, her body reacting before her mind could catch up. Detectives returned gently, patiently. They spoke softly, letting Emma set the pace. At first, she shared fragments: roads, trees, the container. Then names. Then everything. She described Daniel's property. His routines. His vehicle. The letter. That letter became a turning point. Handwriting experts confirmed what investigators already believed: Emma hadn't written it freely. Phone records, fuel receipts, and witness statements began to align. The unstable incident Daniel had mentioned at work, once insignificant, now mattered. It placed him in a pattern of behavior no one could ignore. When officers went to the property, the storage container was still there. So was the mattress. Daniel was arrested without resistance. The news spread fast. Headlines called it a miracle. Commentators debated how someone could survive 9 months hidden in plain sight. But Emma avoided the coverage. She focused on therapy, on rebuilding trust in her own instincts, on learning that survival didn't mean weakness. The trial came months later. The courtroom was packed. Emma entered quietly, older somehow than when she'd left home for school that afternoon. Daniel sat at the defense table, smaller than she remembered, eyes darting, shoulders hunched. Evidence unfolded piece by piece. Maps. Testimony. The container photographs. Witnesses spoke about his unraveling behavior. The jury listened in heavy silence. When Emma took the stand, the room seemed to hold its breath. She spoke clearly. Calmly. She didn't dramatize. She didn't minimize. She told the truth exactly as it was. Daniel was found guilty on all major charges. He received a long sentence, long enough that Emma would grow into adulthood without fear of crossing paths with him again. But before the court adjourned, Emma asked to speak once more. Her voice shook only at the beginning. "I won't carry this forever," she said, looking directly at him. "What you did doesn't define me. And I won't let it." She paused, then added quietly, "I forgive you, not for you, but for me." The courtroom was silent. For the first time since the car doors had locked 9 months earlier, Emma felt something close to freedom settle fully into her chest. Life after the trial did not snap back into place. It unfolded slowly, unevenly, like learning to walk on ground that still shifted beneath Emma's feet. She returned to school under a cloud of whispers and sideways glances. Some classmates avoided her, unsure what to say. Others stared too long, curiosity mixing with sympathy. Emma learned quickly that survival made people uncomfortable. It reminded them how fragile normal life really was. Therapy became a constant. Twice a week, she sat in a softly lit room and learned how to name what she felt instead of running from it. Fear. Anger. Guilt. Relief. The counselor reminded her, again and again, that adapting had saved her life. That awareness was not weakness. That silence, once necessary, no longer owned her. At home, her family adjusted too. Her mother checked locks compulsively. Her brother insisted on walking her everywhere. Love, Emma realized, could be just as shaken as trust. Healing was something they had to learn together. There were setbacks. A slammed car door could steal her breath. The smell of oil or metal sent her mind racing. Some nights she sat awake, listening to the house settle, reminding herself where she was, counting familiar sounds instead of unfamiliar ones. But there were victories too. Emma joined a support group. She spoke for the first time to others who understood without explanation. She learned grounding techniques. She started journaling, turning memory into language instead of letting it remain a shadow. One afternoon, she volunteered to speak at a small community event, not about details, but about resilience. Her hands shook as she stepped up to the microphone, but when she finished, the applause felt different than sympathy. It felt earned. Daniel faded into the background of her life, where he belonged. His name appeared only in paperwork and occasional news updates about appeals that went nowhere. He no longer occupied her thoughts the way he once had. Emma focused forward. She graduated. She moved away for college. She studied psychology, drawn to the quiet strength of understanding how the mind protects itself. Professors never knew her history unless she chose to share it. And when she did, it was on her terms. Forgiveness did not erase what happened. It loosened its grip. It allowed space for new memories, laughter with friends, late-night talks, future plans that no longer felt fragile. Emma Reed was no longer defined by the day she got into a stranger's vehicle. She was defined by everything she built after stepping out of it. Years passed, and the story that once consumed headlines slowly slipped into the background of public memory. But for Emma, time didn't erase it, it reshaped it. She learned that healing wasn't a straight line. Some days were light and ordinary, filled with routines and laughter that felt effortless. Other days carried echoes she hadn't invited. When that happened, Emma didn't panic anymore. She acknowledged the memory, grounded herself in the present, and let it pass without judgment. She stayed connected to her family, closer than before. The fear that once lived in their home softened into vigilance, then into trust. Doors still locked at night, but laughter returned to the dinner table. Life regained its rhythm. Emma eventually chose to speak publicly again, not often, not everywhere, but when it mattered. She worked with local programs focused on prevention and awareness, emphasizing instincts, boundaries, and the importance of being heard. She never sensationalized her experience. She spoke calmly, honestly, reminding others that survival often looks quiet from the outside. When asked how she endured 9 months of captivity, Emma never framed herself as fearless. "I was afraid," she would say. "But I paid attention. And I believed I could still have a future." That belief became her anchor. One evening, long after college, Emma took a walk alone through a familiar neighborhood. Streetlights flickered on as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the pavement. The air smelled like rain, just like it had years ago, but the feeling was different now. She walked with steady steps. Not because nothing bad had ever happened, but because she knew who she was. Emma Reed had faced darkness and found her way back, not untouched, but unbroken. Her life was not a cautionary tale frozen in time. It was proof that survival could turn into strength, that silence could give way to voice, and that even after the longest night, morning still arrives. And this time, she walked forward without fear, carrying her past not as a burden, but as a testament to everything she had overcome.